So let's head down to Northeast Florida, where our good friend Brent Beaird of College Sports Today and First Coast News joins us on this Tuesday edition of Southern Fried Sports. Interestingly enough, Brent Beaird was in fact at the O'Connell Center on Saturday night, taking in that Alabama-Florida men's basketball contest. Alabama, of course, seeing a 21-point lead late in the first half evaporate before the home team Gators get the job done, 104-98 in double overtime. Now, Brent, I think we've even been to the O'Connell Center many, many years ago for an Alabama-Florida basketball contest or two, and we've seen some tough losses for Alabama in that building. But I don't know if they get any more tougher than what you witnessed for Saturday night.
No, I would agree with that. And Travis, this is a much slower week than last week. Citrus Bowl, Gator Bowl, and Bama and Florida hoops last week. So it was quite a week to say the least. But listen, here's the good news and bad news with the Alabama basketball team. That they have indeed significantly improved from the first month of the season. Now they've obviously got a long way to go, to say the least. And listen, they were frankly very impressive in the first half. I mean, they outshot, out-hustled, out-rebounded Florida in that first half. It started going downhill toward the last 2 minutes of the first half and the first 2 or 3 minutes of the second half, when Florida basically was able to cut the lead into single digits as they went back and forth. But the thing that they've got to work on, and I think you've said this well, is that the culture and the mindset for this basketball team has got to change. They've got to be a lot more mentally tough than they are, particularly their in-game situations really need a lot of work. I mean, even in the regulation at the end with 40 seconds left, they're up by 6, and that lead evaporates very quickly. And I give Florida credit, and I still think Florida has a talent to be a Sweet 16 team. Bama can learn from this, but the thing that would really help them, if they could have won that game, beat Mississippi State this week before they've got that gauntlet of Kentucky and Auburn, and could have come out of that like 2-2, would have been a whole lot better off than what they're looking at right now.
Yeah, and I think that mindset is improving. I think you hit on it. In-game situations, though, and that's where some of that residue of a team that's going through transition from one head coach to another, that's where it typically shows up, and that's where it's hurt Alabama in its last couple of losses. Penn State was similar down the stretch to what we saw on the road at Florida. And you're right, give Florida a lot of credit. Andrew Nembhard, Kerry Blackshear, ultimately they were the players Florida needs them to be to win a game like that. But I'll tell you this, the one thing Alabama doesn't really have yet is a true alpha dog. And we typically associate that. We associate that to football, but it's very much true in basketball as well. And I thought Scotty Lewis coming off the bench, not just scoring 15 points, but also pulling down 10 rebounds. I believe he had 3 block shots. You know, Scotty Lewis was that sort of alpha type for Florida. And Alabama, the effort, that's not to say Alabama's effort wasn't good. You just got to have that tough guy, that mentally tough dude down the stretch of games. It's great to have talented guys like Blackshear and Nembhard. And Noah Locke was very good as well. But to have a guy like Lewis coming off the bench, not just in terms of scoring, but in terms of that toughness we just talked about, that was huge for Florida.
Well, and I think Bama had that in Colin Sexton. Not only could he get a basket, but he was tough enough to where if he needed to make the pass or the steal, he could do that. And for long-time listeners, they'll remember a guy like Mule King, Reggie King, right in the middle. They knew when they dumped the ball down that it was going in. But Trev, the other thing that they've got to work on, they missed a ton of free throws that really would have helped them toward the end. And the other thing that they struggle with in every game, if you added this up, Trev, they have at least half a dozen what I would say misses from 3 feet on in that are just mystifying to them at times.
Well, I think that's where you kind of look at Colin Sexton, as you pointed out, his ability, especially at the rim, to finish. That's the biggest difference between a one and done like Colin Sexton and a guy like Kyra Lewis, who Kyra Lewis is going to play in the NBA, in my opinion. And we got to understand, we got to remember, too, Kyra Lewis is essentially a true freshman in terms of his age. Yep. He reclassified, came to Alabama early. So even though he's in his second year, in terms of chronologically where he's at, he's basically where Colin Sexton was a few years back during his one and done in Tuscaloosa. And, Kyra isn't at a point, I don't think, physically yet. Kyra's gifted enough and athletic enough and dynamic enough to get to the rim just about whenever he wants. But the body control and the strength and those things to finish through contact and at the rim, that's still a little bit of a work in progress for Kyra. But you'll absolutely take Kyra every day of the week in most of those situations compared to other SEC point guards. Brent, we really wanted to get into some college football. Obviously, a big day around here on Monday as Tua Tagovailoa announces that he will, in fact, make himself available for the 2020 NFL Draft. When we look at it to this point, 6 Alabama underclassmen now. As of the time we're talking with you, we're still waiting to hear from running back Najee Harris, but you've got Tua Tagovailoa coming out, Jerry Jeudy coming out, Henry Ruggs III coming out, Jedrick Wills coming out. That's 4 offensive starters right there. And then defensively, outside linebacker Terrell Lewis, safety Xavier McKinney. In terms of what it could have been, or it still might be, we don't know for sure the total number of this. Is this about as good as Alabama could have hoped, in your opinion, in terms of the underclass departures, or is it worse, or is it about what you expect?
Well, it's kind of about what I expected. Now, if Najee comes back, and I've heard there's some interest on his part to come back because he may not be happy with his evaluation, and that's a fairly, and I know you've looked at it, deep running back class too, so it might benefit him in order to do that. I thought Henry Ruggs should have come back. I think he could have improved on his stock with another year. Frankly, Trev, I think the guy coming back that is very undervalued, and I understand why, but I think Justin McMillan, with his intelligence and being able to just help these younger kids, along with Dylan Moses, is just absolutely incredible in a lot of ways. And now, look, I'm being a college football analyst and purist in a lot of ways. I'd love to see Tua come back as a once-in-generational player, but I also understand, I thought you said this well in your writing, that his shelf life, and correct me if I'm wrong, is maybe about 2.5 or something like that in the league. And
contracts,
and I get that, frankly, but I'll say this: I think there are more pluses so far than minuses with this group. And to me, the biggest thing they've still got to do, Trav, is rebuild this defense, and I think they're on the way to doing that.
Yeah, if I had told you going into this process, or even a couple months ago, look, you're going to get Dylan Moses back, you're going to get Alex Leatherwood back, you're going to get Devontae Smith back for sure. I think as an Alabama fan, if you're being even just a shred, or using even a shred of realistic viewpoint to it, you probably would have been pretty happy with that. As you said, then you should throw Josh McMillan into that mix at the inside linebacker position with all the reps that you invested into Shane Lee and Christian Harris. You're bringing in an ultra talented guy like Demoy Kennedy from the class of 2020 that's hitting campus. You got Jackson Bratton, another inside linebacker to go along with Ali Cahoe, Jalen Moody. Now you've got a stocked roster, not only in terms of quality numbers, but man, with the intangibles that Dylan Moses brings back. And you're right. I don't know if Josh McMillan for sure now is going to be the starter alongside Dylan Moses, which is what he was in place to do before his injury back in August, because I think Christian Harris at the weak side position might be tough to keep out of that mix with his playmaking ability and after all the experience he got during the 2019 season. But absolutely, Pete Golding, right? Assuming he's still going to be here, he was a big winner in all this, probably more so than just about anybody on this Alabama team. But was Mac Jones maybe the biggest winner yesterday in all this?
Yeah, I think I would think so, absolutely, because the logic would be if Tua had come back, that Mac may be looking for greener pastures at that point. And listen, statistically, Mac comes back with his, I know he's abbreviated starts, but Mac really did fine. I mean, particularly when you compare him with some others. So in his experience, and Trav, I'll be honest with you, you can look at a lot of schools right now, and particularly as we are looking at this situation with like Georgia, with Alabama. I would say right now, I would have a lot more confidence even with that in Alabama's quarterback room than I would with where Georgia would be, particularly if there is no Fromm in this situation.
Yeah, that's going to be fascinating coming up as we sort of transition to decisions outside of the University of Alabama football program. That Fromm decision is the big one now, right? I mean, when you look around the rest of the league and what's out there, obviously we're still kind of trying to figure out Najee Harris at Alabama. But, Jake Fromm in terms of shaping preseason expectations, beginning with the Eastern Division in the Southeastern Conference, but then extending to the league as a whole, and then even on the national front. Do you have a feeling? Have you caught any wind of what Jake Fromm might be looking to do? I would think he would come back, especially with Tua coming out. I understand next year he's looking at Justin Fields, he's looking at Trevor Lawrence, but if you're the third guy in that group in 2021, you're still probably going to be a top 10 pick.
Oh. Yeah. And listen, there are people now that still love Fromm, even though he struggled last year. Now, I know this, the quarterback that you and I saw in the Georgia Dome a couple of seasons ago in the SEC championship game against Alabama was one of the best quarterbacks I've seen in a long time. Now, some of it got away from him this year. And there are myriad of reasons for that. My understanding was he was sitting down with Kirby on Monday, and they were going to discuss what to do. Now, obviously, Solomon Kinley going out. They've got three of those offensive linemen now going to the league, which now they're deep in the offensive line, but I don't care who you are, those three guys are going to hurt. And then what does he do with Coley in that OC position, and Fromm just in his own, I think, improvement that he needs to do on his game. It's a huge decision right now. And Trav, let's just say for a minute, and fast forward to September when Alabama plays them. I mean, no Fromm. Look, you've got Stetson Bennett. You've got Carson Beck, who's the true freshman from Mandarin, who is not ready to play in the SEC right now. So you've got Georgia looking big time in that transfer portal, don't you?
No, I don't think there's any doubt about that. You're looking at every nook and cranny of that transfer portal, because Carson Beck, as you said, for the class of 2020, a year ago at this time, there was some talk that guy might be the number one quarterback for the class of 2020. And correct me if I'm wrong here, but I don't think Carson Beck was a participant in the Under Armour All-American game or the All-American Bowl. So it hasn't been the calendar year for Carson Beck that I think a lot of people anticipated.
He was better his junior year than his senior year. Now there's nothing wrong with that. That just happens sometimes. But the reality is, and what we're saying to the listeners is, Carson Beck's not stepping on that football field at Georgia. I don't think at this point is anywhere near being ready to be a starter. So I mean, you're looking at Trav, the point we brought up here is what Fromm decides is paramount not only to Georgia, but also for that Eastern Division and the SEC.
Yeah, and the good thing for Georgia and for Kirby Smart is in his heart and in the hearts of his family, they are Georgia people.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
This isn't a Tua situation. And I think ultimately Tua and Nalu and the rest of the Tagovailoas, they became very much entrenched in the fabric of the University of Alabama community. That's not to say you can't grow into that type of relationship. But, man, when it is born into you, like Tim Tebow at Florida or some other guys that we've seen in the past, that makes it a lot harder in a situation like Fromm's to go ahead and make that leap maybe a year earlier. We're talking with Brent Beaird, College Sports Today and First Coast News on Southern Fried Sports, presented by Peterbrook Chocolatier. Brent, we're talking about some Jacksonville area quarterbacks like Carson Beck, who is set to join that mix or is joining that mix at the University of Georgia. What's the vibe down there in Jacksonville about local product, Mac Jones, and what he's been able to do this year at quarterback for Alabama?
Well, I think they've been, for folks down here, been very impressed. The Florida Times Union had a big article on him yesterday and today about being able to really say that this is his team at Alabama. I think they certainly respect what he did at Bowles, and that he's bided his time and waited, and it's paid off for him. And when he's got his chance and his opportunity, he has really performed. So, I think there's a genuine excitement as far as what Mac has done and what he can do from down here.
Pending the decision of Jake Fromm, you think Kirby Smart wouldn't mind having a guy like Mac Jones at quarterback in 2020, Brent? What if Jake Fromm goes to the NFL? Bryce Young takes the position by storm here in Tuscaloosa. What about that connect the dots scenario? Now, look, that's all we're doing. We're having some fun here, but those are the potential scenarios that this transfer portal, especially from the grad transfer perspective, possibly present.
I don't think there's any question about it. Now, what Kirby is going to fall back on is Richard Count, Malik Heron coming back on that defense at that point. But Trav, you and I both know defense wasn't that team's problem last year. It was on the offensive side of the ball. And if I can dovetail something in here, which you're smart enough to realize what's coming too, Trav, if Fromm doesn't come back, will there be a parade in Gainesville, Ocala, and surrounding cities by Gator fans coming up the next few days?
Well, if Fromm does come out, that just ramps up the expectations for UF tenfold.
Absolutely.
In the East. I mean, that puts all the heat on Dan Mullen year 3 to get the job done at the cocktail party against a Fromm-less Georgia team next November. Now, from a coaching perspective around the league, right now it pretty much centers on the head coaching spot at Mississippi State after the decision to part ways with Joe Moorhead after 2 seasons in Starkville. It's been an interesting stretch here for a program looking to make a hire at the head coaching position. Just this morning, we are seeing that Joe Judge, assistant coach for the New England Patriots, who had been widely speculated in the last few days, Brent, to be the leading candidate to take over at his alma mater, Mississippi State, as the head coach. Well, now it appears, based on multiple reports, that Joe Judge will become the head coach of the New York Football Giants. Now, you tie that in with the departure today of Matt Rule from Baylor to the Carolina Panthers. Billy Napier going to be mentioned with that job from the University of Louisiana, it appears. Is it Todd Grantham time in Starkville?
Well,
we talk about a head coach for the Bulldogs.
Yeah, I wonder about that. And as a matter of, I mean, the Joe Judge thing, that was the flavor of I would say the flavor of the moment, not the flavor of the day. At this point, as we also see reports now, as Judge maybe even becoming the Giants' new head coach. So does that go back now on? Now, obviously, Grantham was there. Grantham, look, is he ready? Maybe so. Trev, my question and my concern with Grantham's situation is he's done a good job as D coordinator at Florida. Is he the guy that you want for the face of your program? Now look, Grantham's had a few dust-ups, has he not? On the field, you remember the one that he had with Derek Mason, with Vanderbilt. I mean, if he's sitting in with the AD in an interview committee, do those questions come up at some point fairly quick?
If you're John Cohen, the athletic director at Mississippi State, and Grantham ends up being your guy, you're trying to sell it as your Ogeron hire.
Yeah,
that's what you're trying to sell Todd Grantham as.
Yeah,
or similar to Arkansas with Sam Pittman. That's what we're talking about here. A veteran of the SEC landscape, very enthusiastic in his approach, creates juice among his fans and his players. He's going to bring an excitement level to the sideline, those type of things. In other words, he is the polar opposite of Joe Moorhead, who when cameras would cut to the Mississippi State sideline the last couple of years, you wondered if Joe might not fall asleep there
absolutely.
On the sideline. So Grantham would be the entire alter ego of that sort of situation. But if you end up with Todd Grantham after all this, I mean, he had a successful stint there with Dan Mullen as the defensive coordinator, but I don't know if that's a needle mover among the maroon and white fans.
Well, I think, and again, he's united to the hilt. Trav, to me, a Billy Napier would be would have been a great hire. I know everybody concentrated on that for a while, and the Napier's denied it and all that, and it may be too late to circle back on that one or something similar. But they actually may need to let this settle for a day or two and see where they need to go from there.
You know, it's been wide ranging in terms of the potential candidates. Napier would be absolutely ideal, even before the Egg Bowl, and the manner in which Mississippi State was able to salvage that outcome. With the infamous leg hike there in the end zone, there was a lot of smoke even before that game that Billy Napier might be the next guy at Mississippi State. But with Rule moving from Baylor to Carolina, Baylor may be the more preferred destination to Billy Napier than Mississippi State. So much to sort out. We always appreciate Brent Beaird trying to help us do that here on Southern Fried Sports. Thanks a lot, Brent. We'll do it again next week.
Look forward to it, pal. Take care.
There he goes, Brent Beaird of College Sports Today and First Coast News. Give him a follow on Twitter if you haven't already, at Brent Beaird, Beaird, Brent Beaird. Back with more of Southern Fried Sports right here on Tide 100.9 FM right after this.